So I wasn't at Diddy's trial just a couple blocks away, but I was at Harvey Weinstein's trial today for closing arguments, and his attorney said some really fiery things during his closing arguments. He basically pointed at Harvey and said, that fat old man, how could he have been engaged in these sexual encounters with these women that prosecutors say were even Cirque du Soleil-like if he looks like that? Garnering laughs from Weinstein and from the rest of the courtroom. His attorney even mentioned his own sex life, his intimate life with his wife to justify some of Harvey's actions. But then the prosecution came back in their closing arguments. They fired back. They said Harvey was manipulative. He lured these women in with the promise of advances in their career, and these women feared retribution because he was this almighty, powerful figure in Hollywood. And the prosecution will continue their closing arguments into tomorrow. Then the judge will instruct the jury, and then they will go into a room and deliberate and decide whether Harvey Weinstein is guilty or not. Now, we could see this verdict tomorrow earliest, but most likely it will be this week sometime. That depends on what the jury thinks. Hi guys, I'm a CNN producer and I'm standing outside of the courthouse where Diddy's trial is taking place right now, and here are 3 things you should know as we head into the trial. So the first part is the timeline. Last week was jury selection, and we finally have a panel of jurors. This morning they confirmed that 8 men and 4 women will be serving on the jury, and after they were sworn in, then parties began with their opening statements. So what is that? That is essentially when both parties are able to lay out their case. So prosecutors will go first, the government will start, and then defense, Diddy's lawyers, will continue. So the second thing is, what are prosecutors going to argue in this case? They're basically going to allege that Diddy engaged in a criminal enterprise, racketeering conspiracy, and sex trafficking for over 2 decades. They're going to say that he coerced his victims using lies, violence, drugs, and are going to use the stories of 2 women, Cassie Ventura and Jane Doe, as their primary witnesses in the case. And we will hear from Cassie later on in the trial. The third thing you should know is that Diddy has denied all allegations, and he has support from his family. They were here in court this morning. They arrived in a van. His mom, his daughters, sons were all here to show Diddy support. And he was once a worldwide known artist, media mogul. Now he sits in a courtroom, potentially facing life in prison. So he is essentially fighting for his freedom. Now, attorneys for Mahmoud Khalil and attorneys for the DOJ met at this courthouse earlier today for a conference before a U.S. district judge to discuss scheduling primarily and set deadlines for motions to be filed this week. Now, what Khalil's attorneys also argued is that they want more time with their client and to be able to speak to him while he is being held in an ICE detention facility in Louisiana. And the judge actually granted that and allowed them to have more time this week to speak to their client. They also argue that this case is about the right to free speech and the right to protest, and it's about political dissent, while the DOJ attorneys will argue that this is about public safety and about support for a terrorism organization. We will expect more of those motions to drop later this week. Sabrina Souza, CNN, New York. So it's really heating up in New York City today, and I'm not talking about outside, although there's record-breaking temperature levels outside reaching into 100 degrees. I'm talking about the mayoral primary race between Andrew Cuomo and 10 other Democratic candidates, but specifically Zoran Mamdani. They're running a really competitive race. You have Andrew Cuomo on one side, a seasoned politician looking to make his political comeback after he was governor of New York. And then you have Zoran Mamdani, a state assemblyman who's really launched a social media strategy capturing young voters' attention, progressive Democrats, and this is really a vibe check on the Democratic Party. You have Bill Clinton, more traditional Democrats, endorsing Andrew Cuomo, and then you have progressives, AOC, Bernie Sanders, endorsing Zoran Mamdani. So we'll see where that lands with voters today. This could take a couple of days, though, because of ranked choice voting, but whoever wins the Democratic primary will then face Eric Adams, who's actually running as an independent, and Republican Curtis Lee, while likely. But we'll see what happens today. Hi guys, my name's Sabrina Souza. I'm a CNN producer standing outside of the courthouse where the second day of the Diddy trial is taking place right now, and I'm here to tell you 3 things that you should know about today. So the first part is the star witness of the government is on the stand right now. This is Cassie Ventura, the former girlfriend of Sean Diddy Combs. They dated for about 10 years, and she's been recounting her experience in that relationship. She started off by talking about the physical injuries she underwent when dating Combs as a result of him hitting her. Many times dragging her. She said he would kick her, he would smash her head in, resulting in bruises, a busted lip, knots in her forehead. So just a really violent relationship. She also talked about how Diddy introduced her to freak-offs, saying that he asked her to perform for him with a male escort and Diddy would sit in the room and self-gratify. She talked about how these freak-offs continued and went on for days sometimes, and they were drug-induced, and she had to engage in them. She could not refuse Diddy because at one point he had control over her career, over her livelihood, over her apartment. So she felt like she needed to please him, and she was also in love with him. At one point, she broke down during her testimony, saying she did not enjoy the freak-offs, but she felt it was the only time she could spend with him. So that's why she would continue to engage in them, saying although she felt humiliated and disgusted by them, and she couldn't even recount the amount of times she engaged in these freak-offs. The third thing you should know about today is what was the environment in the courtroom like? So you have to remember, this is the first time that Diddy and Cassie Ventura see each other in around 6 years. So she walked in and they did not look at each other. Diddy, however, was very animated during her testimony, passing notes to his attorneys and talking to his attorneys, watching her. His family was there to support him again today, and Cassie Ventura's family was also there. Her husband was in the courtroom, her brother was in the courtroom, cousin. Cassie is pregnant, so Ventura was rubbing her belly many times during the testimony as jurors watched her, and this is a really crucial moment, so the prosecution is still asking her questions, hoping to drive in the point that Diddy was engaging in sexual trafficking. We're outside of St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City, which is one of the most famous churches in Manhattan. On the first Sunday after Pope Leo XIV was elected the first American Pope. We've been talking to churchgoers as they've been walking in and out of St. Patrick's for Sunday services, and many of them have told us how excited they are for this new era in the Catholic Church. We saw many tourists too who told us they're coming from Latin America. One of them came from Argentina, and it's her first time in New York City. She's so excited to be here and said that she is so grateful that Pope Leo XIV has roots in Latin America, having lived in Peru for some time. So an overall joyous sentiment on this Sunday about Pope Leo XIV's new reign over the Catholic Church. That silver fence over there is where authorities say that 38-year-old Cody Balmer broke into the Pennsylvania governor's mansion in the early hours of Sunday after Governor Shapiro and his family were celebrating Passover there Saturday night. Now, he broke into the premises, went to a part of the home and banged on the window, threw a Molotov cocktail in there, and then through the second window used a hammer to break in, jumped into the home, threw a second incendiary device, and then ran out of the house in less than a minute. Now, authorities say he was able to escape despite there being security cameras all across the property here. And he was able to leave the property and only turn himself in on Sunday after an ex-lover of his called police to tell them that it was Cody Balmer who had committed this crime. And this was at the command of Balmer, according to court documents. He later turned himself in to Pennsylvania State Police, and there's still some unanswered questions, but what Governor Shapiro has said is that this was definitely a targeted attack. We don't know what the motivation is, but this was definitely targeted towards him. We're here in Salem, Virginia, standing on a bridge on top of the Roanoke River, and if you can see, the current is still rushing down, and this is because of the flooding that started this weekend and really affected Virginia, West Virginia, Kentucky severely. And you can see there's workers behind me assessing the damage, and this work will continue throughout the state today and into tomorrow and during the week as they face more winter storms. You can see some of the icicles on the bridge over here have formed because of the snowy conditions. It's been a mix of ice, snow, and rain through the weekend and today.